Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, First Christian Church proudly presents Trivia Night! And I am Pastor Scott. I am hosting tonight. Wonderful to have you here. I didn't know we was going to have a second Trivia Night, but the last Trivia Night went over so well, we decided to do it again. So welcome here. We have tonight 4 categories. In each category there are 9 questions, and so you can play at home with your own family with your own rules, or you can just type online. If you have a YouTube account, you can type in your answers and you can play as a group on there. And so we have 4 categories, and I'm going to tell you all 4 of them, and then I want you to do something. So the 4 categories are: which came first, women in the Bible, anything goes, eat, drink, and be merry. And so I have these 4 categories. I have my computer set up here, and so here's what I want you to do. Which category would you like me to start with? Just go ahead and give me a second. All right. Go ahead and just say into your phone or your computer or your TV what you want, and I will take a vote from there. Go ahead on the count of 3, just say what you want. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, well, just so you know, I have no way of hearing what you said. So if you just yelled at your phone, TV, or computer, I'm sorry, I was just having a little fun with you. We're going to start with the first category, which came first. Now, just so you know, last time we did Trivia Night, those are the questions I primarily ask my girls, and those are the ones that we go over all the time, those questions that we talked about last month. And so this month's a little different, and so these are not questions I would normally ask my kids. And so I have moved from the child trivia to the adult trivia. So here we go. Hopefully this is going to be fun for you. So, in the category, which came first, and again, I'm giving 15 seconds for each question. Which came first, I'm going to give you 2 events or 2 people or 2 things, and you have to just say which came first. So you have a 50-50 chance of getting each one of these 9 correct. So it's a little bit of a warm-up for us. So which came first, Noah's Ark or the Tower of Babel? Which came first, Noah's Ark or the Tower of Babel? All right, the answer is Noah's Ark. The next question, which came first, the prophet Elijah or the prophet Elisha? Elijah, J-A-H, Elisha, S-H-A. Which came first? All right, the prophet Elijah, J-A-H. Elijah came first. Elisha was kind of his who he mentored and discipled, who ended up ultimately taking over once Elijah left. All right, which came first, Aaron or Moses? Which came first, Aaron or Moses? The answer is Aaron came first, because Aaron is Moses' brother, older brother. All right, which came first? Both of these occur in the book of Acts. Which came first? The conversion of Cornelius or the conversion of the Apostle Paul? Which came first? The answer is Paul's conversion comes first and then Cornelius's conversion. All right, now we're going back to the Old Testament. We're going to talk about the 10 plagues of Egypt. So which plague came first? The plague of locusts or the plague of gnats? Sometimes some Bibles talk about the plague of gnats being either the plague of lice or the plague of fleas. So which came first, the plague of locusts or the plague of gnats / lice / fleas? The answer is the plague of the gnats came first. That was early on in the plagues, and locusts is near the end of the plagues. Next question, and if you were paying attention at the last trivia night, you probably know the answer to this already. Which came first? The Jewish festival of Passover or the Jewish festival of Shabbat? All right, which came first? Shabbat, or Passover comes first. Shabbat comes 50 days later. Shabbat is also known as Pentecost. And so Passover comes first. All right, now we're thinking way back to those fun kids' stories growing up. Which one of these happened first? The walls of Jericho come tumbling down, or David defeats Goliath with a stone and a slingshot? Which event happened first? Right, the answer is the walls of Jericho came tumbling down first. That's in Joshua when the people are entering into the promised land. That's long before the monarchy arises, which is when David enters the story in 1 Samuel. All right, now we're going to the days of creation. Here we go. What happened first? The creation of the stars, moons, and sun, or the creation of dry land and plants? In the days of creation, what happened first? The creation of stars, moons, and the sun, or the creation of dry land and plants? The answer is dry land and plants. Dry land and plants were created, and then the stars, moon, and sun are created. All right, this is your 9th question in this category of which came first, our warm-up for the day. The question is, whose death came first? The death of Judas or the death of Jesus? Who died first, Judas or Jesus? According to the Gospel of Matthew, we know Judas dies prior to Jesus dying. All right, that's the end of the first category. Now, last time, this is where I took time and we asked 5 questions of people in the congregation, and we did a little congregation trivia. I did not get enough responses back from the last set of questions to do that again this time, and so we're going to skip that. We're just going to be doing Bible trivia tonight, but I'm going to, assuming we have a third trivia night, which I'm planning on doing, when we have that third trivia night, I'll have Jennifer come up with some new questions. We're going to send out a new one. And if I can get enough responses back, then we will have that section in the trivia night that time. So anyways, the next category we have is women of the Bible. women of the Bible. And I'm going to ask this. This answer comes from the Gospel of John. In the Gospel of John, we read about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. Well, Lazarus has two sisters. What are their names? Who are Lazarus's sisters that are mentioned in the Gospel of John? The answer is Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha are Lazarus' sisters. All right, the next question. Who is the biological mother of Solomon? Solomon is one of the kings of Israel, the wisest man on the earth. Who is his biological mother? The answer is Bathsheba. Now, and also David is Solomon's father. But this, Bathsheba and David, this child is not the child that was conceived when David took Bathsheba into the house and ultimately had her husband killed and all that other stuff. That child died as an infant. But they had another child who is Solomon. But Solomon's biological mother is Bathsheba. All right, this is a little bit longer of a question, but we'll get through this. This woman took the Apostle Paul into her home when he was evangelizing in Corinth. She and her husband were tent makers, just like the Apostle Paul was. And so they had that in common. What was her name? She took Paul in Corinth. Her and her husband are tent makers, just like Paul was a tent maker. And her name is Priscilla. Priscilla in Acts chapter 18. All right, now we're back, and there was a woman who lived in Jericho who helped out Israelite spies prior to the walls coming tumbling down. What is that woman's name? Who helped hide spies in Jericho? Her name's Rahab. Rahab hid the spies. Your next question. Samuel was the last of the judges. Samuel was a prophet, a priest, and a judge. Who is his mother? Hannah. Hannah was barren and desperately wanted a child, went to the tabernacle and prayed, asking for a son, and her son's name is Samuel. Her name is Hannah. All right, again, this one's a little bit longer. This woman was living in Philippi when she met the Apostle Paul. After her conversion to Christianity, she took the apostle into her home for a while. She was also a seller of purple linen or purple clothing. What is her name? Lived in Philippi. Took the apostle into her home, seller of purple linen. That is Lydia. And Lydia's story is found in Acts chapter 16. Acts chapter 16. All right, I have 3 more questions about women in the Bible. Who is the only female judge in the book of Judges? There's only one female judge in the book of Judges. What is her name? The answer is Deborah. Deborah was that female judge. All right, the next question. In the book of Esther, we learn that Esther's name was changed to Esther to hide her Jewish heritage. What was Esther's Jewish name? What was Esther's name by birth that was changed to Esther to hide her Jewish family? Esther's original name or real name is Hadassah. Hadassah. And the last question in this category is, what is the name of Ruth's mother-in-law? Ruth from the book of Ruth was a Moabite. A Jewish family moved to Moab, and Ruth married one of their sons. So who was that Jewish woman that moved to Moab? Who is Ruth's mother-in-law? Naomi. And Naomi in the book of Ruth gets really sad and depressed, and she changes her name to Mara. Mara. And so if you said Naomi, you get a point. If you said Mara, you get a point. If you said both of them, you get 2 points. Because you know what? The points just don't matter. All right. That's the end of that category. We have 2 categories left. Eat, drink, and be merry, or anything goes. Well, let's just do anything goes. Let's just do that one. All right. On the Mount of Transfiguration, who were the 2 Old Testament figures with Jesus? Who were the 2 Old Testament figures that joined Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration? All right, the answer is Elijah and Moses. Elijah and Moses appeared with Jesus, and this is when the Apostle Peter goes, "Oh, Jesus, we'll build everybody tents. We can all have tents. All 3 can have tents." Anyways, but Elijah and Moses joined Jesus. Now this is a fun one, and it requires you to actually know the Bible verse in order to get this right. But what is the 4th and 5th words in the Bible? In the Bible, Genesis 1:1, what are the 4th and 5th words in the Bible? Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created. 4th and 5th words, God created. All right. So after Solomon died, the kingdom of Israel was divided into 2. If you've been in the prophets class, you kind of have this figured out. This past Sunday we talked a lot about this. But anyways, the kingdom is divided into 2. The southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom what was it also called, and what was the capital city? What was the southern kingdom called, and what was the capital city? All right, and so when the kingdoms are divided, in the north you have the kingdom of Israel, in the south you have the kingdom of Judah. And Judah's capital was Jerusalem. So Judah and Jerusalem in the south, Israel in the north, and they had a few different capitals at different times in their history. The most popular one, the most famous one, is Samaria. So Samaria was the capital of Israel in the north, Judah and Jerusalem in the south. All right. And your next question is, who wrote the book of Hebrews? Who wrote the book of Hebrews? The answer is, God only knows. We don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews. Oftentimes it was historically attributed to Paul very early on, and in some Bibles it still says Paul is the author. Most scholars reject that. Some people talk about Apollos, some people talk about Priscilla as possible authors. The issue is it doesn't say, it's not like it says, hey, this is the Apostle Paul writing to the people of Hebrews or anything like that. It doesn't have a descriptor like that. So we don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews, but if you read the book of Hebrews, it obviously belongs in Scripture. But we do not know the author. That's not actually the only book like that. In fact, we have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and while historically we attribute it to those three people, and I think there's a good chance those three people wrote those books, nowhere in the actual letter itself does it say, I am the Apostle Matthew. I am the Apostle John. I am Luke, the physician. I am Mark of John Mark. It doesn't say anything like that. And so, and that's the same with the Old Testament as well. So it's not like Hebrews is the only book we don't know who the author is, but in the New Testament it is a rarity that we don't have much of a consensus at all as to who wrote it. All right, here we go. The next question. Who got permission from Pontius Pilate to take Jesus' body down and put it in the tomb? After Jesus had died, who went to Pontius Pilate and got permission to take Jesus down and put him in a tomb? Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph of Arimathea. We just finished up a sermon series over the parables. Here's one of the parables we talked about. In the parable of the lost coin, how many coins did the woman start with prior to losing a coin? In the parable of the lost coin, how many coins did the woman begin with? She began with 10 coins and lost 1. Okay? In Scripture, there were a few groups of Jewish people that opposed Jesus. One of those groups did not believe in a physical resurrection. Which group was it? Which group of Jews that opposed Jesus did not believe in a physical resurrection? The answer is the Sadducees. The Sadducees did not believe in a physical resurrection. Oftentimes we hear about the Pharisees, and sometimes we talk about the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Well, the Sadducees is that group. All right, the next question comes to us from the Apostle Paul, from Ephesians chapter 6. In Ephesians chapter 6, Paul talks about the armor of God. So the question is, what is the sword in the armor of God? In the armor of God, what is the sword? It is the sword of the Spirit. The sword of the Spirit. And you might want to go learn the rest of those parts of the armor of God, because they might become useful when we get into our next trivia night. Hint, hint, wink, wink. All right, now here we are. Last question in this section. Anything goes. And again, it comes to us from the New Testament. So in the book of Galatians, the Apostle Paul recounts a time when he had to rebuke the Apostle Peter at Antioch. What did Peter do to require being rebuked? Why was Peter rebuked by Paul? All right. Peter was being a hypocrite, essentially. He stopped eating. He thought it was okay to eat with non-Jews, Gentiles that were uncircumcised. He was okay with eating with them. Then all of a sudden, a party of Jewish Christians that felt you had to be circumcised to be a Christian showed up, and Peter just withdrew fellowship from those Gentiles who were uncircumcised, withdrew from them and just started eating with the uncircumcised people. And Paul shows up and he says, "Peter, what are you doing?" So that's what it was about. But essentially, he was being a hypocrite. And so here we go in the very last section for the night. Hope everybody's enjoying it. We have 9 questions left in the category of eat, drink, and be merry. And by and large, nothing in here has to do with being merry. It all has to do with eating and drinking. But here we go. John the Baptist had a unique diet. What was his diet? Scripture tells us what John the Baptist ate. What did he eat? All right, John the Baptist had a diet of locusts and honey. Wild honey and locusts was his diet. All right, the next question. In the book of 1 Kings, the prophet Elijah was given food twice a day while hiding in the wilderness. How did he receive his food? Was it Pizza Hut delivery men or was it Grubhub? How did Elijah get his food twice a day while he was hiding out? A raven delivered it. A raven delivered the food to Elijah while he was hiding out. All right, next question I have for you. Most people know that God fed his people with manna while they wandered the wilderness. But what does the word manna mean? Oh, manna from heaven. Usually we picture giant loaves of bread raining out of the sky and hitting people on the head. What does the word manna mean? Manna means, what is it? What is it? So, all right guys, here you go. You ready guys? If you go to your mother-in-law's house and she has this meal prepared and you're really hesitant and you don't know what to do, don't ask questions, just simply say, "Ah, manna." And really you're saying, what is it? When she's going, "Oh, he thinks it looks wonderful." And so you can get brownie points with your mother-in-law while also kind of making fun by saying, "What is it?" All right. Sorry, that's the last joke I'll do today, I promise. I better not promise that. I might do another one. We'll see. All right, and so here we go. This individual ate loaves of essentially bread made out of wheat, barley, beans, lentils, and things like that. But he essentially made loaves of bread and he cooked it over a fire fueled by human dung, human waste, human poop, whatever you need to do to understand. So who is this individual? Who is it that made loaves of bread and cooked it over a fire that was fueled by human waste? And that individual is the prophet Ezekiel. God told him to do it. If you want to know why God told him to do it, write down Ezekiel 4, 9 through 13. Ezekiel 4, 9 through 13 will give you more of a context of why this individual would cook bread over human waste. Ugh. All right. Next question. Please get off that topic. Well, actually, let's not get off the topic. Let's keep with Ezekiel. Ezekiel's a good guy. So Ezekiel was told to eat this item, and after he ate it, Scripture says his stomach was filled and it was as sweet as honey. What item did Ezekiel eat that after he ate it, Scripture says his stomach was full and it was as sweet as honey? The answer is a two-sided scroll with a lamentation written on it. A lamentation being something written with a great sorrow or grief. And so it was a scroll of lament that was two-sided. He ate it, and as Scripture says, his stomach was full and it tasted as sweet as honey. All right. We're done with Ezekiel. That will not be the answer for the rest of the time, just so you know. All right. Esau and Jacob were twins in the book of Genesis. Esau was a manly man, and Jacob stayed at home and did a lot of cooking. Esau comes in from hunting one night and is very hungry and thirsty. And he essentially sells his inheritance, his birthright, to his younger brother Jacob for this kind of food. What kind of food did Esau sell his inheritance to Jacob for? He came in from hungry saying, "I'm going to die of thirst and hunger." And Jacob gives him bread and lentil stew, and in return Esau essentially squandered his birthright by giving it to Jacob. So the answer was bread and lentil stew. Esau wasn't the smartest man, I don't think. All right. Here we go. All right, I got two questions about Moses. Here's the first one. The people of Israel started worshiping an idol, and as their punishment, Moses made them drink this drink as punishment for their disobedience. What did he make them drink? Israelites started worshiping an idol. Moses made them drink this as punishment for their disobedience. So this comes to us from Exodus chapter 32. Exodus 32. Israel makes a golden calf and they start worshiping it. Most people know that they at least made a golden calf and was worshiping it. Well, afterwards, when Moses sees it, he's angry. He has it melted down. He has it ground up into a golden powder, puts it in water, and makes the Israelites drink it. They had to drink the golden calf, or they had to drink golden powder mixed with water as their punishment. Again, that's Exodus chapter 32. All right. As we continue on, only 2 questions left in the entire night of trivia. This has gone really well. I've enjoyed it. So Esau, we've already talked about Esau and Jacob. Now let's talk about Esau and his father. His father was Isaac. And so Esau is Isaac's son. Esau is a hunter. Isaac asks his son to go hunting and prepare him a tasty meal. Now, growing up, I read the King James Bible, and so I knew what type of wild game Isaac asked for. Now, in any other translation, it just says wild game. He was to go out and get wild game and make a tasty meal. But the King James actually lists a type of wild game. What is that type of wild game? What is the type of wild game Isaac wanted, found in the King James Bible? Venison. See, now funny story, when I was doing these questions, I knew I wanted to ask this question, but in my brain I said, oh, I'm going to go get the story that Isaac liked venison. I couldn't find it until I got to the King James Bible, and there it says venison. Everything else just says wild game. And so there you go. Just a little interesting side bit. It even fits in a little bit with Bible translations. All right, last question. Last question, and it's about Moses. Moses was told by God to go speak to a rock in order for the people of Israel to get water. The people of Israel were complaining that they didn't have food or water. God says, go speak to this rock and water will come forth from it. Instead, Moses goes and he strikes the rock with a rod. And then he has to strike it a second time. But when he strikes it the second time, water starts pouring out to care for the Israelites. But there's a separate story from this. There's a story that happens prior to this where God tells Moses to go to a different rock and tells him to do something in order for water to come from that rock. And that time, the time prior, Moses actually obeyed God. What was it that Moses did that first time to get water from a rock where he obeyed God? Not when he disobeyed God and struck the rock with a rod. What did he do that first time? All right, your answer is he was told to go strike the rock with his rod. So think of this. Here's the whole thing. Israel's complaining they don't have food and water. God says, go strike this rock with your rod and water will go out. Moses goes and strikes the rock, water comes out. Later on in history, the people are complaining they don't have food and water. And God tells Moses, Moses, go to this rock and speak to it and water will come out. Instead, Moses hits the rock with a rod twice and water comes out, and he disobeyed God. So that is your answer. The first time he was told to strike a rock with a rod, he did it and he obeyed God. The second time he struck the rock with the rod, he disobeyed God. Whew! All right. So there we go. That's your trivia for the night. Hope everybody had a good time. I am planning on doing it one more time because next time I already have one category and my questions made up. The category title will be Many Ways to Die in the Bible. Should be fun. Anyways, hope you all have a wonderful evening. If you need anything, please reach out to me.